Good morning or afternoon, and welcome to the North Meck High School Algebra 1 EOC video clip number 5. The topic of this video clip is 2.01, lengths and midpoints. Again, 2.01, find the lengths and midpoints of segments to solve problems. Alright, on the board I have two problems. The concepts presented here are not particularly difficult. You do have to know your formulas. Alright. Problem number 1 says find the distance of line segment AB if point A is -2, 1, point B is 3, -4, and find the midpoint. So we're combining the two. We're going to find the distance and the midpoint. Now off to the side, you do see the formulas. The distance formula is equal to the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. The midpoint formula is x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, comma, y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. I do want to make a point of saying that the midpoint is a point, so you're going to get an ordered pair as your answer. Your distance is a distance, so you're going to get a numerical answer. Not a point, but a numerical answer. Alright, for problem number 1, let's start with the distance. The distance is equal to the square root, your formula of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. It's the square root of all of that. Now, distance is equal to the square root. Now, these x's and x, this x and x, stands for the x coordinate of the second point, the x coordinate of the first point. Y sub 2 stands for the y coordinate of the second point, minus the y coordinate of the first point. So now I'm going to plug those in. Once again, I'm plugging in the x coordinate of the second point. The second point is B, the x coordinate is 3. So 3 minus the x coordinate of the first point. 3 minus a minus 2 squared plus the y coordinate of the second point is -4. Minus the y coordinate of the first point, +1. And I'm going to square that. So now D is equal to the square root. Now this 3 minus a minus 2 is 3 plus 2, which is 5 squared. Again, 3 minus a minus 2 is 3 plus 2, which is 5 squared. And I can keep the parentheses around that if I wanted to. Plus -4 minus 1 is -5 squared. So I have +5 squared plus -5 squared. D is then equal to the square root of 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25, plus -5 squared, -5 times -5 is also +25. So I have D equals the square root of 50. Now, if you know how to break a radical down, then you can break this radical down into D equals the square root of 25 times 2, and then have D equals 5 radical 2. So again, the answer is D equals the square root of 50, and if you break the radical down, you get D equals 5 radical 2. Now, you can punch that in the calculator and get a decimal approximation for your distance. You would just type in 5 radical 2, hit enter, and it'll give you a decimal approximation for that. Okay? All right, now the midpoint is much simpler to find the midpoint. It is a point. Okay? So you have an ordered pair. And now it says to add your x's and divide it by 2. So I'm going to take the first x plus the second x, divide that by 2, comma, the first y plus the second y, divide that by 2. So this is equal to the square root of -2 plus 3, which is 1, divided by 2, which is 1/2, and 1 plus -4 is -3, divided by 2. So the midpoint, the point in the middle of this segment, if you were to connect these 2 points and make a segment, the point in the middle would be at 1/2, comma, -3/2. Okay? So again, your distance formula, all you're doing is plugging in, do a subtraction, square it, and then you get your answer. You can break your answer down sometimes and get 5 radical 2, which you could then punch in and get a decimal approximation. Your midpoint, much simpler. Add your x's, divide by 2, comma, add your y's. Again, this is a numerical answer for distance, and your midpoint is a point, so you get an ordered pair. All right, number 2 is the same problem, except that you have your graph. So the first thing you need to do is pull off the coordinates of the points. Point E has coordinates. Point E occurs at the ordered pair -3, 3. -3, 3 is 3 to the left and up 3. So it's -3, 3. F is at the ordered pair. If I match up F, it's 2 to the right and up 1. 2 to the right and up 1. So it's +2 on your x-axis and 1 on your y-axis. Now we're going to do the distance formula and the midpoint formula. I'm going to start with the midpoint. The midpoint of this segment is to add the x's, divide by 2, comma, add the x coordinates. Pay attention to what you're doing. Remember, this is x and y. X and y. This is x first, second, y1, x2, y2. All right, so now you're adding your x's, divide by 2, comma, add your y's, divide by 2. So your midpoint is at -1/2, comma, 3 plus 1 is 4, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, so if I go over to -1/2, comma 2, -1/2 up 2, sure enough, at -1/2 up 2, there's my midpoint, and sure enough, it is the middle point of the segment. All right, now distance. Distance is equal to the square root of, remember with distance, you're going to subtract your x coordinates. All right, so we got 2 minus a -3 is 2 plus 3, which is 5 squared. Plus, I'm going to subtract my y's. Y minus 3 is -2. -2 squared. I can put both of those in parentheses. So we're subtracting and then squaring. All right, so now we have D equals the square root of 25 plus -2 times -2 is +4. So D is equal to the square root of 29. Now, 29 does not factors in such a way that you will get a perfect square, so you cannot break this radical down. The only thing you would be able to do is to get a decimal approximation. And sometimes your test may require that, so you just punch in radical 29 on your calculator, hit enter, and you get a decimal approximation of 5 point ... or leave it as radical 29. That would be your exact answer. Again, this plug-in, I did not show you the plug-in because it's really easy. Okay, I didn't do all that. All I did was show you that you subtract your x's. 2 minus x of 2. 2 minus a -3 is 2 plus 3, which is 5 squared. Plus subtract your y's and square it. Add them up, square, square, add, and take your square root. All right, on the next board, I do have 3 examples. Okay, they are not different from what I showed in the video clip earlier, what I went over. Once again, I gotta say to you that you have to know your midpoint formula, know your distance formula. Now, if that's given to you, I'm not sure about that, but these are not hard formulas. They do go on to geometry, they do go on to algebra too. The midpoint formula, the distance formula, you do need to know those. All right, so in problem number 1, distance and midpoint. Problem number 2, distance and midpoint. Again, distance is a numerical answer. It's just a number. Midpoint is a point. You're going to get an ordered pair. Distance, numerical answer. Midpoint, an ordered pair. Again, the third problem, just like number 2 in the clip, the third problem is find the distance and midpoint given a graph. You need to pull off the ordered pair, pull off the ordered pair, and now you're back to problems like 1 and 2 and follow through. Please complete the additional practice and turn that into your Algebra 1 teacher for extra credit. Thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.